Have you ever looked around and felt like you're surrounded, yet somehow still completely alone? Maybe you've got kids, neighbors, old friends, or even a partner nearby. But deep down, there's that empty ache, like no one really sees you anymore. Like you're there, but invisible. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. A lot of us, especially as we get older, begin to notice the quiet. Not just the silence of the room, but the silence in our relationships. The kind where people only call when they need something, only show up when it's convenient for them, only ask how you're doing when they want to talk about themselves. And that silence, it hurts in ways you don't always know how to explain. You might think back to all the times you gave your energy, your care, your loyalty, times you cooked the meals, drove them to appointments, helped with their problems, all without asking for anything in return. Because that's just who you are. You give because you love. But when it's your turn to need someone, to lean on someone, you look around, and they're nowhere to be found. That's the first sting, realizing that while you were walking beside them, you were the only one truly present. That maybe you were walking alone all along. It's a hard thing to admit, especially for people like us. We come from a generation that values loyalty. We grew up believing that when you care about someone, you show up for them. You don't quit. You don't walk away when things get tough. And yet somehow, so many of us find ourselves feeling like we're holding on while everyone else has already let go. But here's a truth that many of us don't say out loud. Not everyone who stands next to you is truly with you. Some people walk beside you only as long as you're useful. They love your light, your warmth, your strength, until it starts to fade. And when you get tired, when you slow down, when you finally say, "What about me?" they disappear. That hurts, doesn't it? Not just because they're gone, but because you thought it was real. You thought they cared. Sometimes the people who we thought were our closest allies, our most dependable family, or our lifelong friends, turn out to be the very people who were only there for what we could do, not who we are. And when that realization hits, it shakes you to the core. You start questioning yourself. Was I too much? Did I ask for too much? Did I do something wrong? No, you didn't. Let me say that again. You did nothing wrong by loving people deeply. You did nothing wrong by being kind, generous, forgiving. What you did was give real love in a world that often only knows how to take. And the problem was never your kindness. It was that they didn't know how to receive it, let alone return it. Still, even when we know someone doesn't love us the way we deserve, it's not easy to let go. It's not easy to walk away from a child who shuts you out, from a friend who no longer returns your calls, from someone you once trusted with your heart. Why do we cling to them, even after they've let us down? Because we're human. Because we hope. We hope they'll change. We hope they'll remember the good times. We hope they'll come back and see our worth. We stay loyal to the version of them we remember, not the one that's standing in front of us today. And sometimes we cling not because we still trust them, but because we don't want to believe we were wrong. We don't want to admit we poured so much love, so much time, into someone who never really saw us to begin with. But holding on to someone who doesn't love you, that's like trying to water a dead plant. It doesn't grow, it only drains you. You can give and give until your well runs dry, but if the people around you never pour back into you, you'll end up empty. That's not love, that's sacrifice. And love isn't supposed to leave you feeling small, forgotten, or replaceable. Somewhere along the way, you have to choose yourself. That doesn't mean you stop loving. It doesn't mean you become cold or bitter. It means you start valuing your peace more than their approval. It means recognizing that you don't need to beg anyone to stay in your life, that the right people will never make you feel like too much or not enough. And let me tell you something powerful. There is strength in standing alone. I know that might sound scary at first. We're used to thinking that being alone means being lonely. But there's a big difference between solitude and loneliness. Loneliness is what you feel when you're with people who don't value you. Solitude, that's what you choose when you finally say, I'd rather be at peace by myself than be drained by people who don't care. It's not easy. There will be days when the silence feels heavy. Nights when you wish someone would just pick up the phone and call you. Because they miss you, not because they need something. Moments when you question whether you made the right decision by letting go. But those moments, they pass. And in their place, something new begins to grow. Confidence, clarity, a sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on who's around or who's watching. You begin to hear your own voice again, not the noise of others, not the guilt, not the doubt, but your own steady, quiet truth. And that's where the healing starts, because the real danger isn't in being alone. The real danger is in shrinking yourself, just to stay connected to people who don't value you. It's in bending over backwards to keep relationships alive that should have ended long ago. It's in pretending you're okay when your heart is screaming for someone to truly see you. But you don't have to pretend anymore. You've earned the right to walk your path with your head held high, to stop explaining yourself, to stop proving your worth, to stop chasing people who never cared enough to catch you. And when you begin to walk away, not out of anger, but out of love for yourself, something amazing happens. You start to feel free. You start to feel lighter. You realize that your worth was never tied to how much you could give or how much you could tolerate, but to who you are at your core, a loving, loyal, powerful soul who deserved more all along. They may not have seen your value, but that doesn't make you any less valuable. And just because they stopped showing up doesn't mean you stop shining. You're still here. You're still standing. You're still enough. And you always were. There's something heartbreaking about giving your best to someone, only to realize they were never truly standing with you. They might have smiled beside you, shared meals, even said all the right words. But when life got real, when you needed support, understanding, or even just a little kindness, their absence was louder than any goodbye. And maybe you've asked yourself, why didn't I see it sooner? It's not because you were naive. It's because you were loyal. You believed in them, in the connection, in the memories, in the idea that they'd be there, like you were there for them. But what we often forget is that not everyone has the same heart. Not everyone has the same capacity to love, to give, or to stand in the fire with you. Some people only love when it's easy. They're around when the sun is shining, but the moment clouds roll in, they disappear. And if you've ever had someone turn their back on you when you were at your lowest, you know that pain runs deep. Not because you expected perfection, but because you expected presence. It's a hard pill to swallow, realizing not everyone who walks beside you is actually with you. Some people are just close enough to benefit from your kindness, your strength, your protection. But when things get hard, when it's time to show up for you, they vanish. Or worse, they blame you for needing too much. That's when it starts to click. The truth we've all had to face at some point. People can be near you and still not care for you. They can smile and still not have your best interest at heart. They can call you friend or mom or dad and still leave you to suffer in silence. So what do you do with that? You stop pretending. You stop holding on to relationships that are one-sided. You stop confusing proximity with loyalty. And most importantly, you stop apologizing for expecting reciprocity. Standing up alone doesn't mean you failed. It means you stopped settling. It means you realized that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. And when people treat you like an option, like background noise, like someone who will always be there, no matter how they behave, it's time to reclaim your silence. Because silence, my friend, is powerful. It's not empty. It's full of truth. When you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop justifying, Your silence becomes the loudest statement of all. It says, I will no longer beg for respect. It says, if you wanted me in your life, you would have acted like it. It says, I've done enough, I've given enough, I am enough. There's something sacred about learning to enjoy your own company. At first it can feel lonely, especially if you've spent your life pouring into others. The house might feel too quiet. The phone might stop ringing. The holidays might look different than they used to. But little by little, you begin to feel the peace settle in. No more walking on eggshells. No more waiting on apologies that never come. No more twisting yourself into knots just to keep a connection. That should have ended long ago. You finally get to breathe. And then something even more powerful happens. They start to notice. Not when you were crying, not when you were pleading, not when your heart was breaking. No, they notice when you stop reaching out, when you go quiet, when you disappear from the role they assigned you in their life. That's when it hits them. The emptiness where your love used to be. The silence where your voice used to fill the room. The peace you found without them. That's what shakes them. Because they expected you to fall apart without them. They never imagined you'd rise. But here you are, stronger, wiser, more guarded maybe, but not cold. Just aware of your worth, aware of the difference between love and convenience, between real care and emotional crumbs. And when they come back, because they always do, it won't be with truth or change. It'll be with nostalgia, with old jokes, with soft apologies that don't hold weight. They'll say, I miss you, but they won't say, I'm sorry. Because they miss the benefit of you, not the burden of loving you properly. And you'll feel it. That old ache that used to make you want to open the door again. But this time, you'll pause. Because you'll remember those nights you cried alone. You'll remember those calls they ignored, the birthdays they forgot, the silence when you needed a voice. You'll remember how it felt to be treated like an afterthought. And you'll realize that pain, that was your turning point. That's what pushed you to choose yourself for once, to stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. And you won't go back, not this time, because the version of you that existed before, the one who tolerated the bare minimum, who stayed out of guilt, who said yes when you meant no, that version is gone. In its place stands someone untouchable. Untouchable not because you're distant, but because you've grown. Because now your energy is guarded, your peace is protected, your love is offered, not given by default. And your time is sacred. You no longer hand yourself over to people who don't show up fully. You don't water dead relationships or explain your worth to those who should have already known it. You've stopped auditioning for roles in other people's lives that you were never meant to play. And they will notice. Oh, they'll notice. But by then, it'll be too late. Because you're not looking for revenge. You're not hoping they suffer. You're simply done. That's the kind of strength that can't be faked. The kind of healing that doesn't need applause. It just is. You may be walking alone, but you're walking in truth now, in peace, in quiet confidence. And that's where the power begins. You see, something powerful happens when you stop waiting for someone else to make you feel worthy. When you stop hoping that the people who hurt you will suddenly realize what they lost. When you stop explaining your heart to those who never took the time to understand it. That's when you step into the next chapter of your life. And you step in stronger, not bitter, not angry, just aware, wiser. That awareness becomes your armor. It doesn't shut you off from the world. It simply keeps you from giving yourself away so freely to people who treat love like it's disposable. And the beauty of it is this. You're no longer living for anyone else's approval. You're no longer bending and shrinking yourself just to keep the peace. You've learned that peace doesn't come from pleasing others. It comes from finally choosing yourself. And make no mistake, that version of you, the one who walks quietly, calmly, and confidently, is a version they never saw coming. This is what we call the untouchable version. Not untouchable in the sense that you've become cold or distant. No, this is deeper than that. This is the version of you that no longer reacts to the games. The version that no longer gets pulled back into guilt. The version that doesn't flinch when they try to poke old wounds. Because you've already done the healing, the hard, messy, lonely work that they never stayed around to help you through. And now you've come out on the other side, sharper, lighter, more at peace. That's what makes you untouchable. Not that you don't feel anymore, but that you've stopped giving your emotions to people who mishandled them. Now you give your energy with intention. You give your love with care. And you give your time to those who've shown they're worthy of it, not just those who expect it. There's something truly liberating about not needing to prove yourself anymore, not needing to chase after anyone, not needing to explain why you pulled back, why you stopped answering, why you let the connection fade. People can think what they want. You don't owe them your peace of mind, your side of the story, or your energy. Because when you've been through enough storms, you realize peace is the most valuable thing you've got. And it's something you have every right to protect. Of course, they won't always understand that. Some people will look at you now and say, "You've changed." And they're right, you have. Pain will do that. Betrayal will do that. Watching someone walk away while you were falling apart will do that. But the change isn't something to be ashamed of. Because before, you were the one who kept forgiving. The one who kept giving chance after chance. The one who held the door open, even when you knew they didn't deserve to walk back in. And you told yourself it was love. You told yourself that being kind meant giving them more time, more understanding, more grace. But now you know, sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to let the door close. And not just close, but lock it. Because not everyone deserves a second chance at your peace. Some people only come back to see if you're still weak for them. If your boundaries are still soft. If your heart is still wide open, even after everything they've done. They're not returning with love. They're returning with curiosity. They want to know if they still have a hold on you. But here's the truth. They don't. Not anymore. Because now you've remembered who you are. You're not just someone's parent or sibling or friend or partner. You're a whole person. A soul with value that isn't defined by how useful you are to someone else. You've lived through decades of joy, pain, love, and loss. And every single step has led you here, to this moment of clarity. This isn't the end of your story. This is the beginning of the part where you walk lighter, where you sleep better, where you love yourself more than you love the idea of keeping broken connections alive. It's where you stop watering dead gardens. Because the truth is, you never needed them to be whole. You just forgot how strong you were without them. You forgot how to stand tall when others tried to make you feel small. But now you remember, you are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are not too emotional or too intense. You are real. And real scares people who live behind masks. That's why they pulled away. That's why they couldn't stay. Because you asked for depth in a world that's addicted to surface. You offered honesty in a world that prefers convenience. And when you stopped playing small, they didn't know how to handle it. But that's not your burden to carry. You don't need to dim your light for people who live in the dark. So, you keep walking, even if the road is quiet. Even if the nights feel long, even if the silence sometimes stings. Because your steps now, they're honest. They're yours. And no matter who left, who changed, who disappointed you, you're still here, still breathing, still growing. That's strength. That's resilience. That's what makes you unforgettable. Let them watch. Let them regret. Let them pretend they don't notice. But you don't pause, you don't look back, You move forward with dignity, with peace, and with a heart that no longer needs to be rescued. Because you finally realized something that changes everything. You don't need a crowd to feel whole. You don't need noise to feel seen, and you certainly don't need people who only showed up when it was easy. You need peace. You need honesty. You need yourself. And the moment you gave yourself that, you became unstoppable. It's a strange thing, isn't it? To look back and realize how much energy we spent trying to be enough for people who never even saw us clearly. All the times we second-guessed our words, softened our truth, held back our emotions, all in the hope that it would make them stay, that it would make them care. But now that you've made it here, you understand something deeper. That peace was never about fixing broken relationships. It was about learning to stop breaking yourself just to hold them together. And walking alone, as hard as it can be, was never the punishment. It was the freedom you were too afraid to choose. Freedom from pretending. Freedom from proving. Freedom from pouring yourself into cups that only had holes at the bottom. You see, when you walk alone, really walk alone, something inside you shifts. You stop seeking closure from the ones who hurt you. You stop needing explanations that never made sense to begin with. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head that never actually change anything. Because you finally realize closure doesn't come from them. It comes from peace, from silence, from stepping away with no fanfare and no need to be understood. It comes when you decide that your worth isn't up for debate anymore. And sure, they may still try to creep back into your life. They might test the waters with a casual message, a comment, a memory meant to pull you back into the old rhythm. But you've outgrown that version of yourself, the one who kept the door cracked open just in case they changed. Now you know. People don't change because they miss you. They change if they want to. And if they didn't want to when it mattered. They don't deserve to walk beside you now that you've healed. That's not pride. That's protection. And yes, there will still be moments that ache. Memories that flash unexpectedly. Songs, places, birthdays, reminders of what once was. But don't confuse missing the memory with wanting them back. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to feel. That's part of healing too. But don't go back to what broke you just because you're lonely. Loneliness passes. Self-respect doesn't. In fact, the longer you stay rooted in your peace, the clearer things become. You begin to attract different energy. Conversations feel more meaningful. Time alone feels less like emptiness and more like sanctuary. You sleep better. You walk lighter. You stop holding your breath waiting for someone to text or call or change. Because you finally made peace with the truth. Not everyone is meant to go with you. And that's okay. Your life doesn't need to be crowded to be full. Your worth doesn't need to be validated to be real. And your future doesn't need to include the people who couldn't appreciate your past. You don't need revenge. You don't need recognition. You just need rest, peace, and a little more kindness toward yourself. After all, you've walked through so much already, more than most people even know. You've been the steady one, the strong one, the one who kept smiling while your heart was breaking. And now, you finally get to be the one who chooses peace over pressure, clarity over confusion, truth over tolerance. You get to decide who has access to your world. And more than that, you get to build a life that no longer depends on being needed, accepted, or liked by people who didn't see your value when it mattered most. If you're someone in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, please hear this. You are not too old to change, not too late to heal, not too far gone to start over. This isn't the end of the story. It's the start of a new chapter, one that centers you, respects your journey, and protects your energy. You don't owe anyone access just because they once had it. You don't owe anyone explanations for why you've changed. And you certainly don't owe anyone the version of you that suffered in silence just to keep the peace. The next part of your life can be quieter and better, slower and sweeter, smaller and more sacred. Because now you know how to spot the difference between people who clap for you and people who only show up when they're the ones in the spotlight. Now you know the value of your peace. Now you understand the power of standing alone. It's not loneliness, it's clarity. It's not isolation, it's intention. It's not bitterness, it's boundaries. And most of all, it's not weakness, it's strength. So if you're walking alone right now, know this: you're not lost, you're not behind, you're not forgotten. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And as you continue this journey, trust that the right people, the ones who truly value your heart, your wisdom, your presence, they won't need to be chased. They'll meet you where you are. They'll see you clearly. They'll stay. Until then, you walk with yourself, proudly, peacefully, powerfully. And if nobody's told you this today, let me be the one to say it. You are not alone. You are worthy of love that doesn't hurt. You are worthy of being chosen, not just tolerated. You are worthy of rest, of joy, of peace. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this message touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Someone out there may need to hear your story, your truth, your strength. And if you haven't already, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life, where we speak the kind of truth that sets your heart free. Here's to living with more peace, more purpose, and more self-respect than ever before, because you deserve it, at any age.